Picture walking through a vast, mist-covered forest in the twilight hours, ancient trees stretching their gnarled fingers toward a smoky sky, the ground damp with centuries of forgotten footsteps. You can almost hear the faint rustle of leaves underfoot, the distant call of a lone owl, and the whisper of a breeze that seems to speak secrets older than the stones themselves. In this forest, so alive yet untouched by time, there once reigned a figure so enigmatic that even the oldest myths barely hold his memory. The forgotten king of the wanderers. These beings, long lost to the pages of history and the fading breath of oral traditions, once filled the dreams and nightmares of wanderers and wayfarers alike. But now, only shadows linger where their stories once thrived, scattered fragments barely hinting at their power and grief. What kind of ruler was he? And beneath the layers of moss and myth, why was he forgotten, banished not by force but by time itself? This is no ordinary king, nor a tale of simple crowns and conquests. The forgotten king of the wanderers was part monarch, part myth, and wholly bound to the restless souls who walk the earth's forgotten paths. To understand him is to peer into the delicate thread tying human solitude to the wilderness, the eternal quest of those who roam without home or hearth. This might be the strangest thing about the forgotten king of the wanderers. He was both everywhere and nowhere. In the tales collected by folklorist Catharine Briggs in the mid-20th century, he appears less like a man and more like a presence, a flicker at the edge of vision, a murmur in the wind. Unlike the grand kings chronicled in history books, he carried no scepter and wore no jewel-encrusted crown. Instead, his regalia was molded from the very earth beneath his feet, twisted roots for a throne, cloaked in tattered leaves and the mist that never seemed to lift. Many wanderers spoke of seeing him as a fleeting shadow on moonless nights, his eyes glowing faintly with a mixture of sorrow and knowing. A king whose subjects were the lost and the drifting souls, guiding them through enchanted forests or warning them away from hidden dangers. Yet in many accounts from the 12th and 13th centuries across the borderlands of Celtic Britain, he was not merely a guide but a judge, a ruler who weighed the intentions of those who dare to walk paths no one else would tread. Imagine the chill of an autumn night, the sharp scent of damp earth and moss filling your lungs as you cross into the border between the known world and the wild. You see the silhouette of a man, neither threatening nor welcoming, standing silently beneath ancient oaks. His voice, when he speaks, is like the rustle of dry leaves, and his questions are puzzles wrapped in riddles. For those unprepared, he might vanish in an instant, leaving only an echo of wind and the eerie feeling that they have been measured and found wanting. But there's more to this story than cryptic forest encounters. The Forgotten King represents something deeply human and hauntingly familiar, the eternal struggle of those who wander, not just physical travelers, but souls caught between belonging and exile. In medieval folklore, those who roamed without direction were often feared, suspected of dark magic or restless spirits. The king's role was to enforce the unspoken laws of this mysterious realm, keeping the balance between freedom and chaos, solitude and society. His presence might remind us of the ancient therapy sessions of oral tradition, stories passed around fires to confront fear, loneliness, and the unknown. Like medieval social workers, these myths helped communities understand the outsiders, the vagabonds, and those living on the fringes. When you look at the Forgotten King this way, you see a figure not just of mystery, but of social order cloaked in superstition. One of the most famous stories about the Forgotten King comes from a 13th century Welsh tale, held in the Red Book of Hergest. A young shepherd named Rhys, known for his curious nature, ventured deeper into the forest than any had dared before. The air thickened as twilight surrendered to night, and the animals fell silent, as if holding their breath. Suddenly, Rhys found himself before the shadowy monarch seated upon a throne leaned with branches and covered in dark velvet moss. "Why do you wander, child of the earth?" the king asked, his voice both calm and commanding. "I seek a path home," Rhys replied, his voice trembling but determined. The king studied him with eyes reflecting starless skies. "Many wish for home, yet fear the journey it demands. Tell me what weighs heavier on your heart, fear of the unknown or the chains of the familiar?" Rhys, taken aback by the question, paused and then answered honestly. "Both," the king nodded slowly. "Then your path is not outwards but within. Remember this, those who walk seeking home may find none, for the true wanderer must carry their kingdom." in their soul, not in the lands beneath their feet. And with a sweep of his hand, the king vanished like the last mist under morning sun, leaving Rhys to find his way back, changed forever. What these tales really reveal is a profound psychological truth. The forgotten king of the wanderers is a metaphor for the restless spirit inside us all, the part driven to explore, to question, to never settle entirely. In a world before maps and cities, he was nature's version of security cameras, an ever-watchful presence ensuring that those who journeyed did so with respect and purpose, lest they be lost forever to wild magic or madness. Yet beneath this behavior lay a deeper cultural need to explain the fear and allure of wandering in a tightly knit medieval society rooted deeply in community and land. In 12th century Wales and the border kingdoms, those without kin or place were vulnerable and outsiders. To mythologize a figure like the Forgotten King was to personify the dangers and gifts of liminal existence, and to manage anxiety around those caught between worlds. This reveals something deeper about how human societies handle those who do not conform. The king was less a tyrant and more a caretaker of chaos, a figure shrouded in melancholy yet imbued with wisdom. In a sense, he was the original environmental activist, protecting sacred spaces from reckless intrusion while guiding those respectful enough to seek passage. Over time, the stories of the Forgotten King faded, replaced in the public imagination by new legends and rational explanations. As towns grew and maps charted once unknown lands, the wild spaces diminished, and with them, the need for a spectral monarch of the wandering lost its urgency. The forest became less a realm of mystery and more a resource to conquer, and the king's ancient role faded into obscurity. Today, we might see remnants of him in our stories of wandering spirits, the enigmatic hermits who live off-grid, or even in the modern myth of the elusive stranger who appears at just the right moment in a dark alley. These figures echo the archetype of the king who rules the in-between spaces, between civilization and wilderness, safety and danger, known path and unknown adventure. Imagine, then, how different our world might be if the Forgotten King still held sway, if wanderers were still governed not by fear or law, but by the delicate balance of mythic judgment and wisdom. His story invites us to reconsider the value of solitude, the necessity of journeying, and the mysteries long buried beneath the soil of progress. But the Forgotten King was more than just a ruler of wanderers. He was a mirror reflecting the human heart, a reminder that even as we lose our way, there is a sovereign within each of us, guarding our path, weighing our worth, and whispering ancient truths on windswept nights. As we walk further into the modern age, forgetting him means more than losing a story. It means losing a part of ourselves connected to the wild, the unknown, and the beautiful uncertainty of wandering. So next time you find yourself drawn down a hidden trail or lingering a moment too long in the hush of twilight woods, remember the Forgotten King. His realm is the liminal space where memories fade and dreams begin, a kingdom without borders which awaits the brave souls willing to embrace the mystery of wandering. As the mist thickens and the forest exhales its ancient breath, let us return once more to the enigmatic figure of the Forgotten King of the Wanderers, whose story, like the dense fog that refuses to fully lift, lingers in the delicate balance between memory and oblivion. We left Rhys by the king's mossy throne, transformed by a riddle as old as the woods themselves. The true wanderer must carry their kingdom in their soul. But what does this mean? And why is this lesson seated among such wild, forsaken trees, rather than within the comforts of a castle or a village? Delve deeper, and you'll find the Forgotten King revealing a profound truth about human nature. He epitomizes the liminal, the threshold between known and unknown, belonging and exile, safety and peril. In the shadowy borderlands of Celtic Britain, especially during the 12th and 13th centuries, societies clung fiercely to notions of kinship and land ownership. The wilderness was not merely uncharted space, but a terrifying void that could swallow a soul whole. To wander was to risk madness, death, or eternal displacement. It is no surprise, then, that the Forgotten King's figure emerged as both a protector and a judge, a paradoxical symbol cloaked in sorrow, guiding wayward souls, but measuring their worth with grave seriousness. Imagine the damp underfoot, the cold bite of unknown dangers just off the path. His dominion was a realm where the lost were not merely misplaced bodies, but metaphorical fragments of identity, untethered from the comforting cords of society. Each wanderer who crossed his threshold carried the weight of alienation, a burden heavier perhaps than any physical journey could impose. The king was no tyrant, but a custodian of chaos, embodying the psychological struggle of those caught between worlds, those who carried no home yet longed for one, a story as timeless as the restless human heart. This might be the strangest thing about the Forgotten King. He was not a monarch of conquest, but one of care, much like what modern-day folklorists liken to medieval social workers. He administered a kind of spiritual social order, enforcing unwritten laws that preserved nature's sanctity and the fragile balance between civilization and wilderness. Far from the polished courts and thrones with gilded finery, his sovereignty was etched in knots of bark and whispered in the hush between twilight and dawn. The glimmering eyes that startled those who dared approach were not mere hauntings, but watchful sentinels safeguarding sacred spaces. His enigmatic presence reminds us of ancient oral traditions functioning like therapy sessions by firelight, spaces where communities confronted fears of isolation and transformation. Folklorist Catharine Briggs, in her 20th century work compiling British folklore, emphasized that these stories provided a framework to accept those on the fringe and to explore the boundaries of self. In a society where wandering often equated with threat or magic suspicion, the Forgotten King was a figure through whom the community negotiated anxiety about the outsider, both feared and, paradoxically, needed for balance. But there's more to this story than mere folklore serving social control. The Forgotten King is also the echo of environmental reverence, an early sentinel of natural order we might liken to the original environmental activists. As settlements expanded and forests receded, he embodied a spiritual law guarding the wild. Crossing into his realm was to step into a world frowned upon by civilization, a realm where disrespect for nature was punished not by sword, but by vanishing, by forever being lost to the mists. The king's roots reached into the earth and his wisdom seeped through the leaves, making him literally a part of the landscape. To ignore him was to invite ruin. To honor him was to acknowledge the sacredness of the untouched. Consider an old tale recorded by the Welsh antiquarian Lady Charlotte Guest in the 19th century, reminding us how widespread and persistent these myths were in folk memory. In it, a bard named Taliesin, while wandering during a celestial eclipse, the perfect liminal moment, crossed paths with the king. The king spoke not as a ruler demanding obedience, but as a mirror reflecting Taliesin's innermost fears and desires. "Tell me, bard," he said, voice like the rustle of dry leaves, "what melody do you chase in the silence?" Taliesin replied, "The song of truth, yet each note eludes me." The king smiled faintly, shadows dancing across his mossy crown. "Then you wander as the wind does, seeking, yes, but never destined to settle." Before fading into the twilight mist, he left Taliesin with this final counsel: "The path matters less than the courage to walk it." Taliesin's journeys afterwards were filled with mysteries and creations inspired by this moment, proof that the Forgotten King's words transcended mere caution to ignite the creative and restless spirit within. What these tales really reveal is a psychological archetype so profound it echoes across centuries. The restless seeker, ambivalent between despair and hope, exile and discovery. The Forgotten King is a guardian not only of the wild forest, but also of the inner wilderness within us all, the unknown territories of our fears, desires, and dreams. His judgment isn't condemnation but challenge. His disappearance into the morning mist is an invitation to step forward with bravery and self-awareness. The power of this myth also lies in what we have lost. As the medieval age gave way to the modern, as cartographers mapped the last wild places and towns spread like wildfire across the land, the forests ceased to be enchanted realms. The king's kingdom, the in-between space of possibility and danger, shrank and faded into memory. We replaced him with new symbols more suited to a mechanized and monitored world: security cameras, GPS satellites, strict laws governing movement. The wilderness became a resource to master, to tame, to exploit. The sacred dance with the unknown turned into strategy, surveillance, and control. Yet echoes remain. Today's fascination with wanderers, hermits, and the mythos of the nomad draw on the same ancient longing and fear. The image of the elusive stranger appearing at twilight, the call of the open road that so many feel deep within. even the surge of curiosity that drives us to explore abandoned places. These are modern reflections of the king's enduring presence. The Forgotten King lives now in the whispered warnings of seasoned travelers and in the quiet spaces where technologies reach falters. Dark forests, empty mountain passes, and dreams themselves. Our world may have lost the king's physical presence, but we carry fragments of his story in our collective unconscious, in the human drive to wander, to seek meaning beyond borders and familiarity. He is the embodiment of the wild necessity to question, to risk, and to embrace solitude not as punishment but as a sacred path. His kingdom reminds us that every journey is both outward and inward, and that the true sovereignty we seek lies within our own courage and wisdom. So what happens when we forget figures like the Forgotten King? We lose more than folklore. We lose connection to a vital piece of human history that taught us how to face the unknown with humility and respect. We forget that wandering is not aimlessness but a rite of passage, that solitude can be transformative, and that nature, and by extension ourselves, is a realm to be honored, not conquered. Now, as you stand once again on the edge of the metaphorical forest, let the echoes of the Forgotten King seep into your bones. Listen for the whisper in the wind, the rustle of unseen footsteps, and the faint glow of eyes that hold sorrow, wisdom, and a question. Why do you wander? It is an invitation both ancient and urgent to carry your kingdom within and to respect the wild spaces, in land and spirit, that shape every journey. This should be no surprise. The stories of the Forgotten King are not just relics, but living truths, urgencies whispered across ages for those willing to hear. Like a flicker at the edge of our modern lives, he beckons us to reconsider what it means to roam, to belong, and to be truly lost, only to find ourselves anew. Perhaps the greatest gift we can offer these stories is remembrance. To tell them again, to walk the old paths even if only in our minds, and to leave space for mystery in a world increasingly stripped of it. For in honoring the Forgotten King of the Wanderers, we honor the seeker in us all, and embrace the wild kingdom waiting patiently beneath the mists of forgetting.